So we are at the final session of this day 2 of EdTech Korea Forum 2022. So I've been also enjoying all the presentations and the Q&A sessions with the participants. And in this session, we are going to have discussions around scaling my competency with digital lifelong learning and HRD. Along with the technological innovation, we are witnessing major changes in industrial and employment structure. The knowledge that we obtain from schools cannot be used for our career forever. Developing your skills from your various work experiences is getting all the more important. And these renewed skill sets help induce national academic achievement and at the same time enrich individuals' life. And these days, young people do not pursue permanent employment. Of course, they can experience different types of jobs, and we may have a lot of expectations for the future, but sometimes we also have fear. Now we are going to have a discussion around the future direction of our education in the digital transformation with 3 experts. The first speaker is Kelly Palmer, Chief Learning and Talent Officer from Degreed. She's joining us on Zoom. And the second speaker is Professor Kim Dongho, Assistant Professor from Sungkyunkwan University. Last but not least, we also have Professor Joonghak from Gachon University. So we're going to listen to the first presentation of this session. Representing Degreed, we've invited Kelly Palmer, Chief Learning and Talent Officer. She's going to talk about the urgent need to upskill the workforce, and she will talk about the urgent need to upskill the workforce and how technology can be used to effectively upskill the workforce for the future. She is a thought leader and advisor on the future of work, company culture and business strategy, and career development. She is a senior advisor for Firework Ventures on the board of upskilling startup Lean In, and also is also on the executive team of the learning and upskilling platform Degreed. She is the co-author of the Expertise Economy, which focuses on the urgent need to upskill the workforce, which was named one of the best business books in 2019. So, Ms. Palmer, please start your presentation right away.
Okay, thank you so much. It's fantastic to be here today. And I'm Kelly Palmer. I'm the Chief Learning and Talent Officer at Degreed. I've actually spent my whole career in Silicon Valley. Before joining Degreed, I was actually the Chief Learning Officer at LinkedIn. And I spent a few years at Yahoo and a lot of my career at Sun Microsystems. The book I co-authored, The Expertise Economy, talks about the urgent need to upskill the workforce. And we're going to dive into that topic a little bit more today. So one of the things that we're also doing at Degreed is partnering with the World Economic Forum. And the World Economic Forum has an initiative called the Upskilling Revolution. And our challenge there is that we need to upskill 1 billion people by 2030. That is no small task, meaning that everyone needs to get involved in upskilling, whether that be companies or universities, nonprofits, students. We all need to be building new skills for the future. So what exactly is upskilling? And I like to define upskilling as really investing in continuous learning. We need to really understand what skills we have today and what skills we'll need for the future, and to be able to fill those skill gaps. And for companies, that means that they can stay competitive, but maybe more importantly for employees, it means that you can stay employable. So one of the theses of Degreed is that lifelong learning is so incredibly important. And if someone were to ask you, tell me about your education, and you told them about a degree that you got maybe 10, 15, 20 years ago, it would be the same thing as asking if someone asked you about your health and you told them that you ran a marathon 20 years ago. It doesn't really tell anyone what you can do today. So although college degrees are incredibly important, we can no longer rely on college degrees to take us through the entirety of our careers. And in fact, we see even new college grads getting on the job and having to learn new skills right away. The other interesting thing, and this is an article from the Wall Street Journal that came out last month, is that a lot of companies are realizing that things are moving so fast, it's hard to get people with the skills that they need, and that oftentimes we've been requiring college degrees for jobs that don't really require college degrees. And so we see now that there are different ways that you can get an education and a different way you can get skills. And companies are now, like big companies like Amazon and Google and Microsoft, IBM, are saying, look, we no longer care if you have a college degree, if you figured out how to get those skills in some other way. And sometimes companies are offering to actually train employees on the job, kind of going back to an earlier time. So getting back to the World Economic Forum Skills Link Alliance, the trend in corporate America and even with universities right now is to start thinking about people's talent in regards to the skills that they have. And we write this in the book as well, the expertise economy, that the skills are becoming the currency of the labor market. And so there are many companies that have come together that have said, we're going to start using skills-based approaches to recruiting, to hiring, to onboarding, to developing our talent internally, because it's getting harder and harder to find people with the skills that you need. Oftentimes we need to skill people inside of our companies. And so some of the companies that are involved in this Skills Link Alliance, along with Degreed, Google, Amazon, Coursera, LinkedIn, SAP, Workday, Kaplan, Coursera, all the big players. And these are companies that have committed to using skills as the defining currency for how people get jobs and develop in their careers. So let's talk a little bit about technology and innovation in education. I moved into the learning field about halfway through my career. I went back and I got my master's in adult learning theory and education technology. And I was somewhat surprised when I saw how antiquated learning seemed in the corporate environment. And Josh Bersin has a great visual where he talks about the evolution of corporate learning. And you can see that, you know, in the early days, a lot of people were doing custom e-learning, and then we moved to more talent-driven learning. Around the time that Degreed was formed, when I was at LinkedIn too, building a platform to help people learn all the time, on demand, whatever they needed, that came around 2012, and we saw that technology evolve from 2012 to 2018. I still think that digital learning, on-demand learning, is critical for people in the workforce. You need to get what learning that you need when you need it. But what we're seeing now, especially as we're really facing this challenge of upskilling 1 billion people by 2030, is really moving towards capability academies and really helping people do deep learning and learning in the flow of work. So what does that look like? Well, let's first talk about, you know, where we started in learning. When I started in the learning field, the only technology we really needed to worry about was a learning management system. And I felt like it was a pretty limited technology. I mean, basically what you could do is you could put some content online, track whether people completed it, and then also register for people for in-person classes. A bit limiting in terms of a technology. And then we've seen over time that there are several tools to create content. some L&D groups use some of these tools to create online learning, and some of it was sophisticated, a lot of it not so sophisticated.
So she was making the presentation in real time, and we were listening to her presentation. It seems like she's having problems with the internet connection. So we are trying to identify the real cause of this issue, and we'll try to reconnect with her. And if it's not possible, we'll have to listen to the second and third presentation first and come back to the first one. So this is the final session of day 2 of EdTech Korea Forum 2022. So we will wait for Ms. Palmer to reconnect. So we are at session number 3 in the afternoon, and we are having some technical issues. So we are trying to reconnect with Ms. Palmer. I think she's back. So Ms. Palmer, you back?
Resume your presentation?
Yes, I didn't know I was gone, but where did we leave off?
It's okay. You can just start where you just finished. You just stop. Like
start where?
20 seconds, 30 seconds. Is
okay,
short
I'll
time.
start where I am. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can hear you well. Thank you.
Okay. So should I go ahead?
Yes, please.
Okay, so we talked about some of the popular content libraries that are out there. When I was at LinkedIn, we bought lynda.com, and Skillsoft is also another content library that's popular. And then you see new content libraries such as Coursera actually entering the fold. Are you hearing me okay?
We are having another issue with the internet connection, so I think we'll have to once again try to resume. Or maybe we have to listen to the second and third presentation first. So is she back? So we will try once again with Ms. Palmer. So we will resume Ms. Palmer's presentation on the urgent need to upskill the workforce.
So, Chief Learning and Talent Officer, Kelly Palmer, you're just back. So please restart your presentation if you're okay.
So, okay, and so I'm not sure what the technical difficulties are about, but the main point here is how do you make all these technology components work seamlessly together for the user? That's the biggest challenge that we've seen in corporates. And so enter the learning experience platform, Degreed, which actually helps bring technology together, like your learning management system, your HRIS system, your content, and then also allows you to track what people are learning and what skills they're building. So this is what a learning ecosystem looks like. And when we talk about having to bring all of those different pieces together, the point is you've got your systems, you've got your content, and then you've got your open, free content as well. And so a learning experience ecosystem or platform actually has all of these things underneath, and what the learner sees is just the front end of Degreed. And so this is the main concept of a learning experience platform. I think one of the really great parts of a learning experience platform is that people get credit for all the learning that they're doing, not just classes you go to, but if you read a book, or if you listen to a podcast, or if you read articles, or you're doing a variety of learning, a degree can give you credit for all that learning that you're doing. And you get a personalized learning profile that you can take with you throughout your career. So a very cool idea, because the idea is that we're learning all the time. Sometimes we are learning every day, and sometimes we're taking more involved classes around management training or doing coaching and mentoring. And so being able to track the learning you're doing throughout the course of your career is the goal here. So, so much learning is happening, but are you getting credit for it? This is what a degree dashboard looks like. So you can see that, you can look at analytics, like what are the top things that people are looking at from a content perspective? What are the popular skills that people are actually building? What are people searching on, so that you can get an idea of what people are wanting to learn about. These kinds of analytics, learning analytics, are becoming critical to any learning organization to really understand what your employees are learning. The next thing I wanted to talk about are capability academies, because what we've learned is it's not just enough to gain knowledge. You have to actually, if you want to build skills, you have to do deeper learning than that. According to a study by IE University, however, developing skilling academies takes real expertise, and a lot of learning organizations don't really have a methodology or the expertise in order to build academies. Some do, and that's great. But I would say the majority of people don't really have the methodology or the expertise to build skilling academies. And so you'll see that there are new technologies or new offerings that will say, look, we've built a skilling academy for you. Again, another example from Josh Burson, where he's put together HR and learning capability academies for that audience. Or like LearnIn, the company I sit on the board of, is allowing you to see a marketplace of capability academies that if your employees want to upskill in a particular skill, you don't have to create that academy. You can actually find it in a marketplace of academies. If you do want to create your own academy, though, LearnIn is also providing an easy methodology for you to create your own custom career academies for any skill that your company deems as critical for the future of work or for their future success. And a lot of this is about curating content, getting cohorts together so peers can learn from each other. And actually demonstrate capabilities through real work and demonstrating their mastery of a skill. So with that, I am going to stick around so that I can answer questions at the end of this overall session. But I just wanted to say that technology is playing a huge part in how we're thinking about learning moving forward. And when you're creating a learning strategy at your company, I think it's critical that you have people who understand content, technology, and analytics. I think those are some of the three big areas when we think about skills for a learning organization that we really need to focus on for the future. And if you do want to connect with me, feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn or follow what I'm learning on degreed.com. So with that, I am going to stop sharing, and I'll stand by for the Q&A section of the session.
All right. Thank you very much. 고맙습니다.
Thank you very much for your presentation. So she talked about the need to upskill the workforce, and it was a really informative presentation. And she is currently working as the Chief Learning and Talent Officer and at Degree, and she shared with us her context. So we hope to have additional chance to engage with you after listening to all the presentations.
김동호 교수님께서 준비를 하고 계신데요. 교수님은 미래 교육 트렌드와 성공적인 학습자 역량이라는 주제로 교육의 측면에서 테크놀로지에 기반한 교육의 트렌드를 조망하고 우리가 직면한 시대상과 요구되는 역량에 대해서 설명을 해주시겠습니다. 교수님은요, 학습 분석학, 일원인 환경의 설계와 개발, 에듀테크 활용 교수 설계 분야에서 연구를 수행해 오셨습니다. 다양한 교육기관 및 기업들과 협력 프로젝트를 수행하셨고요. 최근에는 시뮬레이션 기술과 AI 기술을 활용한 학습자 중심 교육 환경 설계와 이와 관련된 연구물을 발표 또 출판하고 계십니다. 자, 그럼 김동호 교수님의 발표 지금부터 시작합니다.
네, 안녕하세요. 성균관대학교
Hello,
교육학과 김동호입니다.
I am Dongho Kim from Sungkyunkwan University. I want to deliver my presentation titled Trends in Future Education and Competencies Required for Successful Learners. So if we're gonna look at some of the key words, and then in the digital era when the EdTech is spreading, what kind of capability does the learner and the teachers need to have? Let's examine this together. In the education field, we are seeing a new era. And I would like to look at this new era with three different lenses. First is called the digital transformation. So there's a lot of teaching methods and that are becoming digitalized. And second is the information overflow. So the information, there's excessive information, and the amount of information or the types of information that we are exposed to is also significantly increasing in big data, and the AI is having a significant impact on education. So let's look at these keywords that I just described to you one by one. First is digital transition. Before, the learning was only one mode, whether it's offline, online, or virtual space. So it happened in the separate spaces, but now the learners, they can experience these different modes of learning at the same time. So even within a classroom, instead of limited to physical space, they can use computers or mobile devices or VR device or other digital resources that are provided by the teachers. And on the right-hand side, it shows the realization of metaverse and our College of Education. So it shows various pedagogical methods that can be applied in the College of Education. So students can be involved in the AI-related practices. And I realized the metaverse in the R&D lab. So the students that want to come into my lab, they can obtain the acquire information and post comments if they have any questions. And I would like to talk about the information overflow. Unlike before, for particular contents, those particular content is not dominated or owned by a certain institutions or schools. So market or academic sector or the information that used to lie in school, it be open, and the world is becoming more open than ever before. So this has been existing for decades, and the contents that we have a lot of contents that are provided, including the ones that are provided through MOOC and in campuses or there's no more just a fixed learning space. They consume or study the contents at anywhere at any time. So it's not just the opening of the information or those information becoming public, but the role of the school and institution is also changing. Well, in the past, certain educational institutions, they monopolized the information, and then they had the authority of accrediting, providing a degree, but nowadays the users, they have an agency and they are engaged in self-directed learning. I'm sure you hear a lot about big data and AI nowadays, and these and the academy is being raised because it enables personalized learning. So in the system, the feedback is provided instantly, and the users can monitor their learning, or they can interact with the peers to easily identify their strengths and weaknesses. So there are a lot of platforms that are being developed that enables all this. So actually in Industry 4.0 and in this era of digital transformation, we have often heard about the general competencies. The competencies that you see here on the slide are the competencies that are required in Industry 4.0 that are often talked about in the World Economic Forum: creative thinking, collaboration, communication, and critical thinking. And this is described as 4C. So when these are in line with the big trends that I've just described to you, what are the key things that the teachers or educators should pay especially close attention to? First is the capability to switch between different modes of learning, and second, because we are living in the overflowing information era, in line with the set target, the teacher needs to internalize various resources and tools that's available to them. And third, the teacher needs to use the big data and AI as a tool to maximize learners' capabilities. So let's look at the first competencies. The users or the learners, they will be exposed to different modes of learning at the same time. So you can see the various learning activities that's happening. So this happened in one of my classrooms. So first, using LMS, I open my lecture, and then students, they deliver a real-time presentation, and third, you can see me and my students having conversation on SNS, and then they deliver a presentation, and then they get feedback from this metaverse. So in just one course, one lecture, there's this diverse various interactions using different modes of learning. So students'
이런 역량들이 점점 중요해지고 있다고 생각합니다.
capability or competencies to use and switch between these different modes of learning becomes ever more important. So we often think that we have to just choose one of these modes of learning, but within the blended learning, there's a wide spectrum. So there can be a fully online course and a face-to-face course, and then between that there can be different types of blended learning. So in doing homework or delivering presentation or taking courses, they need to switch between these different modes of learning to deliver desired output. And the training often takes in different forms, and as it was said in the previous presenter, the degree platform can be used to study Microsoft contents, or there's a platform that is developed to coach and manage in Walmart. So various scenario is presented for problem solving, so the manager can choose various actions for the problem solving. So that kind of VR is also available and is being used. And in our university, we do a lot of community activities for students. Or other non-credit activities take place in this VR. And this is another example of the Metaversity at Sungkyunkwan University. There are seminar, workshop, forums, student community, and we have a global class where we invite guest speakers from other universities, and with the faculty, in order to promote interaction between faculty and student, this metaverse is being used. So as we move more toward a digital transformation, transformation will take much more higher portion in the future. A lot of the education will transcend between different modes of learning. So if you look at this image on the right-hand side, it shows KTE2's Metaverse education platform. So this is to offer all-in-one education experiences. And what you see in the middle is something called sandbox. So it has a very high legroom. So users can use the 3D objects to create a new object. And you can see companies are located in this map here in the middle. So in order to buy this one single map, there is a fee that one has to pay, and that's going up, and a lot of companies are participating to be located here. So I think a lot of activities can take this kind of shape in the future. So in this kind of virtual space, various educational experiences will be offered through educational services or companies, and learners or users can take courses in this space or can interact with other peers or can use other companies' services at the same time. So it will become this kind of extended or lifelong learning. So various learning experiences cannot be easily accumulated nowadays. When one studies or study micro contents, those kind of study history cannot be accumulated well. But in the future, if we use the blockchain technology, that kind of a study record can be digitized and that can be accumulated. So without having to make a separate effort, that will help that person to move up and enter into a higher level of school, or can help them when they get a job. So in this era of digital transformation, this kind of switching between different modes of learning, what kind of skill is needed for students? Self-learning skills or self-directed learning skills, and the skills to utilize various resources will become more important. And another skill is metaverse recognition, meta recognition. So students have to make a good judgment about what they know and what they don't know in order to wisely use the tools that is available to him or her to achieve desired goal. And third skill that I would like to talk about is information and internalizing the knowledge. So the open platform and the micro contents are abundant nowadays with just the one click of a mouse button, and without having to pay a fee for it, there are various contents that we can experience, obtain. So if you look at the slide, we have TED, which is more of a conventional one nowadays, and you can see a micro degree in Australia, Melbourne University in Australia. So without having to visit the campus or register at the university, you can get the micro degree or nano degree for taking the short courses. So it's kind of certificate or degree courses are open to the public. So if students are willing and have time, then they can gain this kind of experiences. So it's no longer the issue is on accessibility of the information, but it's on the user. They have to play the role as an evaluator to judge whether they need or don't need that information, and have to be an agent. They have to play the role as an agent to select what to study and have to decide on what pace he or she will study and on what format he or she will study that, using what kind of path and how to raise one's voice in online. So this kind of skills as an agent is necessary for students or user. So there is a distributed cognition, and based on this distribution cognition theory, on the left-hand side, a lot of people were very much interested on the activities that happen within the brain. So how the information are combined together to be stored as has a long-term memory.
이제 오른쪽에
But
보시듯이
nowadays,
정말 다양한
the shift
인지적
has
자원들이
focused to
과잉해서 학습자들을 둘러싸고 있는 상황입니다.
there's so excessive cognitive resources. Users have a meta recognition skills.
나를 둘러싸고 있는 다양한 인지적 자원들 그리고
So
내가
has to
모델링
be
할수
aware
있는
of various
다른
cognitive
학습자들,
resources
그리고,
surrounding them
다양한
and
사례들을
other learning
자기가
resources in
에이전트를
other
가지고
cases. So
공부를 하는 게
user or
아주
learner has to
중요하고요.
be an agent to
그리고 마지막으로는
select
학습자는
and
이제
curate them.
더 이상
And
수동적인
lastly,
지식의
the
소비자가 아니고
learner is no longer a
크리에이터로서
passive consumer. Rather, the learner can become a
지식
creator
기여를 하는
and can
창조자로서의
contribute
역할을
to
하게
the
됩니다.
knowledge
왼쪽
community.
그림에 보시면
So if you look
이제
at
GitHub라는
the image on the
유명한
left-hand
오픈
side, it has a
플랫폼이
popular
있죠.
open platform, GitHub. So in this GitHub,
ICT 분야와
there
관련된 전문가들
a lot of IC-related experts and also amateurs with different skill sets, and they work on a project with the common goal, and they open the sources and they provide feedback to each other, which makes it further develop and improve.
그 IT 분야의 일들이 오른쪽
So
그림과
what's
같이
happening in the
많이
IT field is
다른
happening
지역에
on the
있더라도
right-hand side. So if you are physically distant, if in the
각 국가의 사람들이
you
모여서
are
같이 프로젝트를 하는
in
경우가 많습니다.
geographically
이런
distant place,
경우에서는
many people get
온라인상에서
together
학습자의
for
역할이라고
and
한다면 지식을
carry out a common project. So rather than just consuming the knowledge or downloading a content, the users and learners can learn and contribute at the same time. So this is expanding the concept of digital literacy. Before, the digital literacy was more close to accessibility, and is moving toward utilizing the information, but it will move up to a higher level. So whether learners can understand the information correctly and whether they can create the information. So we have to look at digital literacy in this regard, and we do a lot of digital literacy for companies and schools, and the training contents of the digital literacy has to change accordingly. And it is very important for learners to leverage AI and big data to upskill themselves. As learners or as educators, what does leveraging this AI and big data means for them? I think in the near future, the learners' competencies and the educators' competencies will improve by utilizing big data and AI. This shows an example of Carnegie University using AI-based educational software as a powerful tool for personalizing instruction. So you can see that when using this AI tool, the students' progress of solving mathematical skills, and you see those questions. It shows the students who are struggling and the students who are doing well. So those kind of pace or the learning pace can be identified easily in real time. So teacher know in what question the student is struggling with and can provide personalized feedback. Even if we look at these kind of cases, we can find out that the educators or teachers' competency is improving by using AI, and there is self-monitoring, so learners can check their progressing status and can check what part of the study is weak and what has been what needs to be improved. And by using AI system, there are a lot of platforms that recommends contents like Do Learning or in platform called The Grade, content recommendation take place. And in the higher education, I put in here the example of Dankook University, and other universities can recommend a course for students, and based on the student data can recommend other courses or curriculum. And there's a Santa platform, the platform that was made by Reed. So if students solve a question based on that, it conducts diagnostic on the strengths and weaknesses and makes a recommendation of the contents. So it's no longer static, where learner just passively participate. So before, learner just consume the contents, but nowadays, learners can choose the learning method and tailor the courses. So how should the learning be like in the future? It should be agentic learning. So learner has to be equipped the skill to become the agent in their learning and gathering information, evaluating it, and internalizing information for better learning is also very important. And learning is taking place in various different platforms. So learning by switching between these different learning platform is very important. And once by using AI, learners have to engage in study to improve his or her achievements. So that's the end of my presentation. I'll have more discussion later. Thank you very much. Thank you for your presentation, Professor Kim. Talked about the translate future education and competencies required for successful learners. Even though we're heading toward the end of the session, still many participants are posting questions on the YouTube. It's very interesting because I have not really thought about this lifelong education myself. Now I will introduce the last speaker.
The last speaker is Professor Joonghak from Gachon University. He is going to give us a talk on the title of Beyond Order, Cause the Effect for Each Employees. And he's going to talk about some of the new technologies that are being applied in workplaces. He is currently working as an assistant professor of management in College of Business at Gachon University. He offers people analytics and management courses for undergraduate and graduate students. His interests involve people analytics, digital transformation in HR, diversity, equity, and inclusion, international human resource management, and recruitment. He also authored 3 books. Good afternoon. I'm Joonghak, professor from Gachon University. I would like to thank the organizers of this forum for kindly inviting me here today. I understand that previous presenters really made informative presentations, and today I'm going to give you a talk on the title of Beyond Order. There are a lot of concerns that many corporations have. They are now looking at employee experiences, and which is also the topic of my presentation. There was SHRM22 conference, which is the biggest gathering of HR personnel in the world. In 3 years, the SHRM was organized in Louisiana, in US. Around 100 or so HR personnel attended, the event. And with KJM, I also want to share with you some of the experiences that I had so far. I'd like to talk about the industry first. From 2020 to 2022, we went through a major event. As you all understand, human beings have evolved for the past 10,000 years, and we adapted ourselves according to the environment. And we've been through a lot of changes, actually. In 2020 until 2022, we experienced the major health crisis, the COVID-19 pandemic, which brought about massive changes to people around the world. And also, it brought about a lot of changes to employees in organizations. And we want to understand what kind of changes that these employees had to go through. And because we do not know what really happened, it can be referred to box. Based on this black box approach, at SHRM conference, a lot of different agendas were addressed. In this year's conference, discussions took place under the theme Cost Effect. As you can guess, it is about how we can cause impact or effect. Then what kind of effect do you want to have? There are more than 100 researchers in the organization. Before attending the conference, we had a small workshop with Korean professors on this topic and what kind of discussions we want to have for this year's conference. As we just described, between the 3-year period from the 2020 to 2022, we believe a lot of negative things happened to our employees, and the role of the HR personnel would be once again imbuing positive mindset to our employees. So we had 7 days of discussions, and as you see in this diagram, we can summarize the discussions this year. There were more than 100 sessions taking place at this year's conference, and I was able to extract the common theme, such as diversity, equity, and digital transformation, and hybrid workspace. As you can see in this diagram, all those topics are really about how we can engage our employees and how we can retain our workforce. That means the employees in our workplaces are not really focusing on their work, and at HR, how can we improve engagement and retention? So those were the major topics that were addressed in this year's conference. And today I'm going to share with you the discussions that took place, and maybe I'll be able to share with you some of the solutions for improving retention and engagement. CEO Johnny Taylor made a keynote speech during the conference. Probably you will be familiar with what happens. There are usually more than 15,000 attendees in this conference room, which is quite majestic. So when he begins the session, the global HR people really cheered for him, and he began his talk this year with this phrase: "We are at a crossroads." What it really means is that all the members of our organizations are at a crossroads, and whether we will continue to grow or whether we will end up at a dead end. And he brings up 3 different topics. The employees feel powerless, and they feel loss of dreams, and they also lost faith in their institutions, and a lot of people went through issues with their mental health, and also we were able to identify some organizational cultural issues, and now we also understand the renewed importance of skill building and alternative credentials. Utilizing technologies, we can improve employees' capabilities, but at the same time, we can also need to look at the emotions and the organizational culture. So that was a sort of trailer for this year's conference. So, as was mentioned by the first speaker, George Burnham researches and IBM researches can be referred to. So, as we had discussions with the SHRM executives on the future of HR, we presented with the George Burnham's study. There are three different stages in HR. And there is HR 2.1 and 2.0 and HR 3.0 that I would like to bring your attention to. Now we want to make sure that our workers have process excellence and standardized workflow, but the way forward in HR 3.0 is employee experience, and at the same time, we need to have personalized employee experience, and you also need to have transparency in workforce. Unfortunately, if you look at the current HR practices, I think we are at HR 2.5. So we need to think about how we can advance to HR 3.0, and maybe technology can play an important role. In order to reach HR 3.0, we need some technologies. So I'd like to talk about that. Then, why do we need to focus on employee experience? There's an expression called pass the baton. That means giving up your control to somebody else. In conventional HR, we are not focused on employees, but the HR systems center around the organization itself. And the control is held by the organization. But in future HR, we want to have a transition to employee-oriented HR practices. That means the authority is changing from or switching its hands from the company to the employees. And this type of discussions really happened in many of the sessions of this year's conference. And I wanted to define the discussions with the phrase beyond order. So, because we were able to witness the passing of the baton because of the great resignation. In June, when I visited the US, according to the labor statistics in the US, more than 5 million people left their job in May. And in 1 year last year, more than 50 million people left their job. That's a massive number of people. In Korea, if you look at the Korean statistics, around 10% of the current workforce change their jobs or leave their current jobs. And the US was registering more than 20% of turnover rates. According to McKinsey & Company, more than 40% of the global workers are thinking about leaving their job in the next 3 to 6 months, which is a really big change. As you understand, high turnover is not always negative. It's typical to have 10% turnover rates, and I think it is a healthy turnover rate. But if it's as high as 40%, it is a problem. And this is a global phenomenon. More than 40% of the global workforce are thinking about leaving their job or completely retiring in the next 3 to 6 months, which is the Great Resignation. I attended many sessions in the conference, and when asked about the current headcounts or current employment, more than sufficient or the majority of the attendees said that they're looking for jobs. And one reason is because of the Great Resignation, and also there is what's called the Great Reshuffling happening also in Korea. Now the employees want to find new jobs before quitting their current jobs. Then it can be interpreted as the current employees are willing to find new jobs. So it means that we have to listen to all the employees' opinions in devising or upgrading our HR system. As you see in this diagram, and on your left, you see these diagrams have been shared with the audience in many other occasions. Of course, there are a lot of domestic researches, and in 2015 and 2017, according to Freyer-Osborne's study, in the future there will be more than 55% of jobs that will disappear. And when I was working in the HR field, of course, we had this estimate, but we wanted to understand how many jobs actually disappear. So I looked at the relevant data. The x-axis is the probability of jobs to be replaced by AI. AI has the 30% probability of having 30% of their jobs disappear. So x-axis represents the probability of jobs that will disappear in 2017 and in 2020. HR jobs increase from 700 to 1,000, and that increase is represented in the axis Y. And if, according to Freyer-Osborne, in Korea, we are able to identify a pattern that the number of jobs was decreasing in Korean companies, then you may ask me what kind of jobs will disappear in the future. To answer that question, we conducted additional analysis. On your right, you see a table created by clustering analysis. There are 4 different clusters. In cluster 1, which represents undisturbed jobs, it has lower probability of losing jobs, and these are jobs that saw a pure or net increase. And for example, software developers, dietitians, and nutritionists the jobs that will continue to exist. In cluster 2, which is defined as emerging jobs, which represents 26% of probability of replacement, and there were more than 100 plus between the year 2017 and 2020. And industrial technology managers and graphic designers belong to these emerging jobs. And cluster 3 is worrying jobs. So you should worry about losing your jobs, and it has higher probability of replacement. And as you can see, operation-related jobs belong to these worrying jobs. And cluster 4, of course, represents a lost job, which has more than or nearly 90% of the probability of replacement. So simple sales work and manual work related jobs are likely to disappear. And because of the technological development, a lot of company jobs will disappear. So we do have significant impact of technology on jobs. Now I'd like to talk about how we can retain employees when all of these things are happening. In the SHRM conference, was highlighted that technology should be wisely used, and listening to individual employees' voices is the employee experience, and it requires more than the efforts of HR personnel. And if let's say there are 1,000 HR personnel, they cannot possibly listen to all the opinions of all the employees. And we need to rely on technology to collect the voices of the employees. This is a case or interesting case showcased or introduced by BMW. Recently, for the past 2 years, they also had very high turnover rates. And a lot of things of the HR system of the BMW were designed and implemented by the executives. And when they were going through the Great Resignation, they realized the importance of listening to the employees, and they used 4 different technologies. They used the natural language processing technology and dashboard. On the bottom of the slide, using the NLP language, they created the dashboard, and they were able to extract important keywords from the employee opinions, and that was utilized to upgrade their HR system. They also utilized network analysis methods. 1 year turnout was really high, and they wanted to understand why people were leaving, and they now realized that the network quality that the employees had was really different. And at workplaces, safety had to be improved, and image recognition and machine learning algorithms were used in order to improve the industrial safety. And mixed reality, AI, and VR were also used to reshuffle and upgrade the employee training. So this is what's happening. AI, machine learning, VR, and AR-related technologies are being used for HR purposes. Here, these technologies are being used in order to better listen to the employees. And this is a case that I was actually part of in Korea. Of course, digital transformation is about utilizing technology to change something. Then what do you want to change? We have changes in our business models, and we design and execute work design. In the past, the general accounting people calculated the monthly pay and put cash in the envelope. And the digital transformation will change the nature of different roles. And with the changes in roles and responsibilities, we need to understand what kind of skills and capabilities will be required. And upskilling and reskilling have to follow. But we have to reflect the business value chain, and we have to design the works, and then do the redesigning and reskilling of the workforce. And we have to first understand that the nature of the jobs and works will change along with the digital transformation. I talked about the discussions that happened in this year's SHRM conference. The focus of future HR would be about listening to the employee's voice, and we can do it better by utilizing different types of technology. And if we conduct relevant activities in line with digital transformation, we'll be able to improve a lot in our corporate culture. So that was the main message that I wanted to deliver. I hope to answer your questions if you have any during the Q&A session. Thank you very much. So thank you very much for your passionate presentation, and we hope to continue our conversation during the Q&A session. So how did you enjoy the presentations this session? Because I was also able to relate to some of the contents of the presentations. So how can we improve our job-related skills in the era of digital transformation? Of course, lifelong learning will be very important. So it was a really important session to be able to listen to the valuable insight. Unfortunately, we had some connection issues with Ms. Palmer, but I'd like to thank you for your kind understanding. So we will now have the final Q&A session of today's forum. And once again, thank you very much for your encouraging messages, and I'd like to read some. So it was really good to listen to these high quality presentations. Once again, thank you very much for your presentations. Sunny Lee also sent us a really kind message about my work. Thank you. So we had 2 domestic speakers, and we also had the participation from Ms. Palmer. So now I realize that the actual skill is really important rather than college degrees. So really we need to have upskilling. And upskilling and reskilling are really important topics these days. And in universities, it is really important to nurture talents and also equip our students with the skills that they can use in their work. And while listening to Professor Kim's presentation, the learners' capability should be improved for what they have to do after education. So I selected some of the comments that were posted by the participants, but we did receive a lot of comments about the presentations. Now we are going to take some questions from the participants. And the first question is directed to Ms. Palmer. And you're online. So one question to you.
You mentioned the importance of a continuous learning by upskilling. Other than college degrees, what skills and attitudes are required to teachers for future education?
Thank you very much for that question. And I think it's an important one, too, because if you look at models of learning at the university level, we still see a lot of instructors lecturing to their students rather than involving them in actually building skills. So I'd say for instructors, looking at new learning methods that were discussed by the other presenters as well is really important to blend learning, get people involved in learning and practicing those skills. And then the other really important thing is to be able to help students translate what skills are they learning when they're taking courses in college, and how does that translate to skills that are required on the job. I think those are some key areas we could focus on.
Thank you very much for your answer. 네, 질문에 대한 답변 좀 명쾌하게 해주신 것 같습니다.
Thank you for clear answer.
자, 그리고 교수님께 좀 드릴게요. 김동호 교수님께.
And I have a question for Mr. Dongho Kim, posted by Ji-yoon. So in order to improve competencies of students, you propose 3 directions. So I would like to know specific measures or ways to achieve that. And it's important for learners to wisely choose the contents among various resources like you mentioned, but what kind of education is needed to enable students to be equipped with that competency? That's a very good question. So there are 3 competencies that I explained to you in my presentation. In order to cultivate these competencies, as I've said earlier, digital literacy, I think there are skills that is included as part of the digital literacy. In need to have the educational curriculum be improved for students to have this high-level digital literacy. Because if we look at the current digital literacy, education is focused on program skilling or way to use Microsoft Office, but going forward, this is not going to be sufficient because learner has to be a creator or has to use the digital resources and apply that appropriately for the problem solving or conducting one's task or performing and working for their job. So have to actually do a problem solving in their job or get a feedback from their peers. We also have to make improvement in the assessment system. And another thing that I want to add is that the learner will be experiencing various learning. Will go through various learning experiences and then have to find what is most optimal learning method is for them is. So I think meta learning has to go hand in hand. And the high-tech platform can be incorporated into developing this meta recognition competency. So he just talked about the platform to develop this meta cognitive capability or competency. Do you want to add on to that?
So in the field, we track individual progress to improve the metacognition. And of course, you can utilize technologies to obtain feedback, or we really have a ongoing performance evaluation, and we have to reflect the development requirements. Then we'll be able to improve the meta cognition. Thank you very much for your answer. And maybe this is a question that I'd like to ask all the speakers. Of course, the online platform is being widely used for education and also in other industrial sectors, but the adoption is really accelerated in education as well. What will be some of the benefits of educational platforms? And there are, of course, advantages of face-to-face learning, because you can empathize with your students and you can provide feedback directly to the students. So, Ms. Palmer and professors, what do you think some of the advantages of the online education platforms?
So I can begin, and I'd say one of the biggest advantages is that we don't have to choose between in-person and online. Actually, I think some of the best learning that I've seen out there incorporates a blended approach to that. So, you know, time is valuable when we look at research and we hear, you know, what are the biggest obstacles to learning? It's that people either don't make time or have time for learning. And I would say that a lot of time traditionally has been spent giving knowledge to people rather than having them practice the skills when they're in person. So this idea that you can use a learning platform to get the knowledge part of learning, but then use your in-person time to actually practice the skills, get feedback from peers, reflect on what you're doing. I think that that's the optimal solution. And then, of course, the main thing, I think, or one of the main things that a learning platform can do is give you data and analytics about how people are doing. It's not enough to just say people completed a course. What are they actually learning, and what skills are they developing? And those are some of the metrics we can be thinking about and leverage a learning platform for.
이게 무조건 뭐 오프라인의 만남, 온라인의
So,
장단점을 딱 구분하기보다는
of course, instead of distinguishing the face-to-face learning and online learning, we should be able to tap into the benefits of the both worlds. So we cannot really, we don't have to really select one of the two. So Professor Kim, what's your thought on this?
Well, I think it's not a matter of choosing one between online or offline learning. Well, I think the task that is good for the face-to-face learning is when it requires a lot of cognitive skills. For example, if learning a basic concept or if learning basic terminology, online platform can actually be more effective in terms of accessibility. However, when applying those concepts and learning and developing that into a project and applying the knowledge, and if it involves exchanging with the others, then face-to-face learning will be better. I also share the same view. Well, recently companies are using the technique called design thinking. So they discussed the importance about the empathy, and I already talked about the design thinking. So instead of having the design thinking session online, they do this offline so they can empathize with one another, because when they look at each other and when they have conversation face to face, then they can easily generate more creative ideas. So by being in the same space, I think that is one of the benefit of offline space. Yes, I think this is also in line with the blended learning. So I would like to read some of the questions that just came up. Mr. Lee, I listened to your presentation, and it seems that it will be a difficult time for small and medium-sized companies or the startup companies. I think they need some support at the government level. What do you think?
It's a really tough question to answer, but what I can say for sure is that, of course, if you're not prepared and embrace the digital transformation, but if we focus our attention to the human aspects of it, we can utilize online platforms and other type of solutions. And if you can use those solutions available, you'll be able to pursue some level of digital transformation. And I hope there will be a lot more government support as well. Thank you very much for your answer. And Professor Kim Dongho, this is related to learning analysis. Maybe you can analyze the strengths and weaknesses of your learners, and of course it is important to encourage students' agency. Maybe because of AI-driven learning, the learner will have lesser amount of opportunity to reflect on their own learning practices. I think this is a really good question, and there are a lot of discussions taking place on such a concern. For highly sophisticated learning platforms, self-monitoring and self-assessment is encouraged to understand how you're doing. And it will be really useful to improve the metacognitive level. And when the level is improved, the learner can move on to the next stage. So some platforms help the learners to improve their metacognitive level. So there are really some good aspects with the learning platforms. And there was a question posted by JJ, and it was a really good question, I think. And our time is almost up, and it is time to conclude. I'm really happy that we had highly productive discussions, and I'd like to extend my special thanks to Ms. Kelly Palmer for joining us overseas. So with that, we will wrap up the last session of today's forum. Until the last minute, we are getting all these comments and messages online. So we need to have our transition to skill-based learning, and there were a lot of appreciation expressed by participants about the valuable presentations. So we have a really good engagement with the participants, and good knowledge is being transferred and shared with online participants. And I have a lot of interest in HRD, and I was able to obtain a lot of insight. And it was really good to catch up with and had the opportunity with the Ms. Palmer's presentation, to listen to Ms. Palmer's presentation. We are going to upload all those presentations on our official website so that you can watch them later. But it's always good to enjoy our sessions in real time. So once again, please join us tomorrow as well, which is the last day. We began our presentations at 9:30 a.m. and the turnout was really great, and there are many of you who are still with us until the last minute. With that, I would like to conclude Day 2 of EdTech Korea Forum 2022. Once again, thank you all very much for your kind participation. Tomorrow, we will also begin our sessions at 9:30 in the morning. Please join us in Day 3 of EdTech Korea Forum. Once again, thank you very much today.